Welcome back to Reflect Politics. Jasmine Crockett had another moment today in which she absolutely filleted Marjorie Taylor Greene for putting on a show in Congress.
We've had a number of these hearings, so I do want to be clear. Before the Trump administration came in, this committee did exist in the form of the Oversight Committee, and our task is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. In that vein, we had a number of hearings, at least last term. I can't speak for any other term as I'm only in my sophomore term. And we dealt with improper payments. And interestingly enough, our chairwoman, who is so passionate about this today, she missed every single one of those improper payment hearings. But just to be clear, I was there. So I don't want anyone to believe that Democrats just come to work and don't plan to do work. In fact, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that the Republicans believe our job is, because right now they have relinquished their constitutional duties over to an unelected bureaucrat, someone who no one went out to vote for. And absolutely, he is occupying the Oval Office, as we saw yesterday. And that is a first for me, to see someone occupying the Oval Office who's never actually been elected to the Oval Office and actually answering more questions than the person that allegedly got elected. But for whatever reason, this is the first time we're having a DOGE subcommittee hearing, and that guy's not here. Instead, we have y'all. So I do want to thank you for coming. But I will say this. It's also interesting to me that in the first few days of DOGE existing, we know that they are trying to get rid of the Department of Education, USAID, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're laying off FAA workers. They are going after the FDA, the CDC, the HHS, the FBI agents, and they're talking about getting rid of FEMA. And they brought y'all in. And I am going to say that I actually was shocked that there was only one person that seemed like he was an overt Trumper as you laid out your opening remarks, because I anticipated that at least one of y'all would say, yes, what Elon is doing is exactly what we would prescribe. But instead, I will applaud you because you actually were focused. You talked about what the American people are looking for us to do. We've actually consistently on this side of the aisle promoted this idea of making investments into technology so that we can do things such as, say, look at the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense that takes up approximately 50% of our discretionary income, or our discretionary spending. Approximately 50% goes to Department of Defense. Department of Defense has not been able to pass an audit in the last 6 audits, and we're not talking about pennies. I understand that we want everything to be perfect, and if we could get all waste, fraud, and abuse out, that would be fantastic. But let me talk about the big numbers. The big numbers are on that side. When we look at, say, our entire workforce, our federal workforce, as we're trying to somehow fire all of them, they don't even make up a total of 5%. It's even less than that when we look at our budget. But let's talk about defense. That just happens to be the same side of the ledger that Mr. Musk gets the vast majority of his money from. In fact, at the same time that they were unlawfully, and we will stay in court, because on this side, we believe in law and order. We believe in, a number of us are actually lawyers, but nevertheless, we understand the Constitution. We believe in that as well. And so there's things such as, impoundment, right? Because as Mr. Whitson said, he said, we need to return the power of the purse to Congress. It never left. According to the Constitution, that's where it's at. Now, I know that people are confused right now because for whatever reason, we had a guy that went in, and you talk about people invading our data. Listen, people said that they were upset about TikTok, but I'm upset about the guy that runs Twitter, who for sure is doing nefarious things, because I don't understand, if you are trying to conduct audits and figure out where the waste, fraud, and abuse is, I don't know why you would go to some tech guy. In fact, it was only techies that were sitting there at inauguration. We didn't have auditors. I would welcome auditors to come in and do forensic audits. In fact, he sat there in the Oval Office yesterday and he admitted that he was lying, and he was using his propaganda machine to do it when he said that we sent millions of dollars to Gaza for condoms. That was a lie. So let me tell you something.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
It's time for
the
us
gentlelady's
to do our
time
job
has expired.
and reign rein in this rogue actor known
The gentlelady's
as
time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Burleson.
These Republicans think that the U.S. federal government is all theater. It's all just a show. They're there to try to gin up their voters to donate more to their campaign coffers, and that's about it, which is a huge waste, fraud, and abuse of the power of their seats, of the power of the position that they hold, which in and of itself is just hypocrisy at hypocrisy's finest. When you have people who can impact the world so much treating it like it's a commercial for them. Now, this isn't only Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's the entire Republican Party, because their leader, Donald Trump, is the biggest waster, abuser, and fraudster of the American taxpayer dollar out of anyone who's ever sat in the Oval Office. And so it's really rich to hear people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Republicans and Donald Trump talk about waste, fraud, and abuse when they're the ones who are just absolutely guilty of it. I will say that it was really easy for Donald Trump, who for years, while President Biden was doing work in the Oval Office and Trump was campaigning across the country, just lying through his teeth about what Biden was doing, how the election was stolen. It's really easy for him to campaign, but once he's in the Oval Office and Republicans have the majority in Congress, it's a whole lot more difficult for them to be the wasters, the fraudsters, and the abusers, because everyone's looking at them. They have the power to change things, and you have Democrats on the other side calling them out for it. Now, another Democrat who called out Republicans for their hypocrisy was Melanie Stansbury during this same hearing.
Well, I never thought so many conspiracy theories and wild accusations could be wound into one 5-minute speech, but I appreciate my friends across the aisle. First of all, let's talk about this massive mandate that supposedly brought Donald Trump into office. Donald Trump did not run on putting an unelected billionaire in charge of dismantling the federal government. He ran on lowering prices for Americans. And I think it's interesting that while we're sitting here this morning, the top of the New York Times is reporting that inflation has risen unexpectedly as food and energy prices have soared. What's going on, guys? I thought you were going to tackle inflation and food and energy prices. Isn't that what the executive orders were supposed to do? Oh, wait. Or is dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion in our federal agencies and putting an ideological agenda and trying to fire the federal workforce your actual agenda? Have you been too busy trying to actually address the fiscal health of this country? Because the numbers are telling us that you have. So let's be real about what's going on here. I also want to point out that literally while we've been sitting here for the last almost 2 hours getting lectured on fiscal responsibility, literally the Republicans just released their plan to raise the debt limit while we were sitting here. And they want to raise it by $4 trillion. Okay, guys, like literally, I'm just like without words. Inflation is going up. You want to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. You want to gut Medicare. You want to gut Medicaid. You're talking about going after Social Security after promising that you wouldn't. I mean, really, what the heck is going on here? We're not trying to take down Elon Musk as a businessman. This dude is literally breaking the law inside of the federal government. And for a party that is supposed to be the party of law and order, in quotes, I really do not see you holding him accountable and doing your most basic constitutional responsibility in the separation of powers. So, I want to end where I started. We are the Oversight Committee. We are the People's House for the United States of America. We represent the American people. And so, Mr. Elon Musk, if you would like to appear in front of the Oversight Committee, you have been duly invited. Please, come tell us what you're doing. Come testify in front of the American people. And please, come hold yourself to account. With that, I yield back.
Now, the only thing I was thinking of when I was listening to Stansbury was that a lot of Republicans believe that inflation was so bad under President Biden because they were lied to by Donald Trump over those 4 years of campaigning. Republicans and Republican media who time and time again told them that inflation is out of control, when if you look at it, inflation was out of control after the pandemic, and then the Biden administration brought it back under control. Now, what's funny is, as I was listening to this, as I was thinking about Republicans lying to the people for the last 4 years, the White House press secretary took one of her first questions about egg prices soaring and inflation surprisingly going back up, and she continued to try to blame Biden for it.
First of all, on the inflation point, we did receive those numbers, and they were worse than expected, which tells us that the Biden administration indeed left us with a mess to deal with. It's far worse than I think anybody anticipated, because unfortunately the previous administration was not transparent in where the economy truly was. We know people at this very podium told the American people that inflation was transitory and that it would go away. That was not the case. And now the last report of the Biden administration, as revealed today, shows that inflation is still about 4.5% higher over the past 3 months. This is an indictment on the Biden administration's mismanagement of the inflation crisis and their lack of transparency in addressing it.
This just goes to show you that it is never going to be Donald Trump's fault. He's always going to play pretend and put on a show in his delusional theater that he is the one who will always bring down inflation, except when he doesn't. He's the one who's always going to tackle waste, fraud, and abuse, except he doesn't. He's the biggest contributor to it in the history of our country, like I said. It's never, the buck will never end with Donald Trump, and he has surrounded himself with sycophants like his White House press secretary, who is going to do his bidding and continue to pass the buck onto other people or the Biden administration. But I want to hear what your thoughts are on these clips. Let me know what your reflections are down in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed to Reflect Politics yet here on YouTube, be sure to do that. Thanks for watching. My name is Brendan. I will see you in the next video.